Sarah, you seem to be muted. There's no audio coming through.
And the thing that I hadn't done was muted all the way through.
But they enjoyed it.
Delightful.
I bet everyone there enjoyed it, even though we didn't hear it.
I can't hear you either, so it's,
Oh, right.
you know, these things happen. I did it beautifully, didn't I? You understood the story, didn't you? Right. I've got a human being there, so I'm going to wave at the human being. And then I'm going to invite my next teller to come up. Do you want to stand or do you want to sit?
I'll stand up.
Okay, so you can stare at Mike, he's on there. This, sorry.
Hi, mate.
It's Donald Nelson.
Well, we've just arrived. I left at 4 o'clock this morning from Balloch on the bonny banks of Loch Lomond. Anybody been to Balloch? You have, yeah. Yeah, well, that's where I came from this morning. I've just arrived. I am absolutely exhausted, but I'll tell you a story. Is everyone enjoying the weather today? Because in Scotland, every single day, you should visit Scotland, really. Every single day is just like this. It never rains. You're laughing at it never rains. But that's a problem sometimes, because there were 2 ducks, and these ducks lived in a pond. And this pond started to dry up for about 5 weeks, and we did have weather like this for about 5 weeks without any rain in Scotland. It started to dry up until there was like that much water left. And the duck said, well, we've got nowhere to swim with, and all the vegetation, it's all dying. it's all dying off. We need to find somewhere else to go. And one duck said to the other duck, yeah, well, why don't we just fly off tomorrow and we'll find somewhere else to live. And so that's a good idea. But they heard a voice beside them saying, what about me? And looked down, and there was Frog. And Frog was one of these creatures who complained about everything. The water's too wet, the water's too dry, the water's too deep, the water's too shallow. I can't, there's nothing for me here to eat. What am I going to do? If you two fly away, what am I going to do? And first duck looked at second duck and said, we can't really leave him here, can we? So they come up with a plan. Second duck said, I've got a good idea. Why don't we get a stick? And what we'll do is, I'll hold on to one end of the stick with my beak, or bill, I think they call them in ducks. And if you hold the other end, then the frog can hold on in the middle, and then we can fly away. And Frog said, that's a great idea. Oh, well, I'm glad you come up with that because I'm really fed up with this. And he just said, just be quiet and get on the stick. So Frog got on the stick and they started to fly. And they flew and they flew and they flew. And right, how far did you travel to get here? Just 1 hour. And did you actually say the thing that kids always say when they're in the back of the car? Yeah. But what did you say? Come on, you need to say it louder than that. And the answer was no. Okay. And the frog is hanging on. I'm nearly there yet. My arms are getting tired. Look, this is terrible. I can't see any water down below. I can't find a new place to live. And eventually, the two ducks, just when they had a look at each other, and they went away down. And Frog was saying, my arms are really tired. I'm hanging on to this and hanging on to it. And first duck said to second duck, I've got an idea. Frog, why don't you hold on to the stick with your mouth? And Frog said, well, that's a better idea. See, I'd thought of that, but you said hold on to my arms, and I was going to say hold on to my mouth, but and he said, just go on the stick, will you? So first duck grabbed one end, second duck grabbed the other, Frog, and they took off. And they hadn't been going very far when Frog said, oh, we nearly splat. And the moral of that story is, sometimes it's just best to keep your mouth shut. Thank you.
Thank you for that apocryphal tale, Donald. We'll all take note, and we'll keep our mouths shut if we're holding a stick in the middle of the air, supported by two ducks, as you would. Yes. So, Shane, please come forward.
Oh, thank you. So I need to move this because I quite like to be closer to the audience when I tell stories. So hopefully this will work. It's better, I can see. Hello. So I'm going to tell a slightly different kind of story, which happened a long, long time ago. But before I start, I just have to ask these children something before I start. Fairies, are they normally good or bad? What do you think? You're not sure. That's a good answer, actually. What do you think? Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. Well, thank you. So this is the story. So this is a story that happened a very long time ago, and there is a fairy. But it begins with a husband and a wife, and they longed for a baby. And they kept trying and trying, and still no baby came, and they longed for a baby. Sometimes the husband would come home and find his wife sobbing because she just wanted the baby. And then they were in the garden one evening, and she said, "Husband," she said, "I don't mind what the child is." She said, "I just want any child, boy, girl, it doesn't matter. I just want a child." Well, at that moment, a little fairy was walking through the garden, and she heard them. And she thought, any child, I'll put that to the test. And she looked about and she saw a hedgehog. And she thought, we'll put that to the test. Well, after a few weeks, the husband came home from work. What do you think the wife said to the husband? Yes, the wife said to the husband, got the right one. What do you think she said? "Husband, I'm pregnant." Thank you for helping me there. Thank you. She said, "Husband, I'm pregnant." He said, "Oh, we're going to have a baby. We're going to have a wonderful. We're going to have a baby." Well, the weeks went past. The mummy's tummy got a little bit bigger, a bit like mine, just a little bit. And then the months went past, and the mummy's tummy got a bit bigger, and a bit bigger, and a bit bigger, and a bit bigger. And eventually she had the baby. And she picked this little baby up, and she put the baby on her breast, and she said, "Oh, he's so beautiful." It was a little boy. She said, "Oh, he's so beautiful. Look, he's so beautiful and lovely." And the father came and he had a look, and he went, "Oh, that's an ugly baby." She said, How dare you? It's our dear son." He said, "Well, look at him. Look at the hairs. He's got black hairs all on his head, and they go all the way down his back, and they're a bit spiky. And look at his tiny little nose like a little hedgehog. And look at his tiny little hands and his tiny little feet. He looks like a hedgehog. He's ugly." "He is not. He's our baby," she said. "He is absolutely beautiful." Well, she nursed this little boy. And eventually he got to be crawling around. And eventually he was holding onto the furniture, and he began to walk around. And eventually he could walk freely. And every time the father walked past, he'd go, "Oh, that's an ugly boy. Oh, you are ugly." Well, years of this happened. And the boy got fed up with his father calling him ugly. Father thought he was the best thing ever, the sweetest child, and he was a lovely little child. But he got a little bit older, and he got a little bit older. One day he said, "I've had enough. I want to leave." Mother said, "Oh, you can't leave. You can't leave." She said, "You're not old enough." He said, "I want to leave." He said, "I'm fed up with being treated badly by father. I want to leave." Father said, "Good. What will get you going?" He said, "What I want is the cockerel and some sheep." Yes, you can have some sheep, you can have the cockerel, yes, but I want a saddle made and a bridle for the cockerel. Okay, he said. Off he went. He went down into the town, got the leather maker to make a beautiful saddle to fit a cockerel and a beautiful bridle to fit a cockerel. He went back and he put the saddle on the cockerel and the bridle on the cockerel, and the young boy, who was known as a hedgehurst, half boy, half hedgehog, he got on there, he got the sheep. He bent down, he kissed and hugged his mother. He gave his father one look, and off he went. Just riding all these sheep behind him, a few chickens and a cock. And off he went. Well, years ago in East Anglia, at least, and many other parts of this country, the forests and the woods just went on and on and on and on. And so did he through the forests. And he came to a place where there was a kind of a beautiful spot where there was an opening in the trees. The sun came through, and he thought, "I would like to live here." So he set about making himself a little wooden shack. He ploughed a little bit of ground. He started feeding the chickens, and what happened? The chickens were happy, sort of pecking away and finding little insects and beetles to eat, and what happened? The sheep were munching the grass. And that's where he stayed for several years. And before long, he had hundreds of chickens and hundreds of sheep. And he had just a wonderful, healthy sort of farmstead. One day, he heard click, clock, click, clock, click, clock. What do you think it was? It was a horse. And it was a horse. And on top of the horse was a king. And he got to where the hedgehurst was, and he took one look at him and, oh, you're an unfortunate looking creature, aren't you? He said, anyway, he said, you, I'm lost. Show me the way out of the forest back to my palace. And the hedgehurst looked at him and he said, I think you should say please. I'm the king. I'm not saying please to you. Look at you. You're just a peasant. I'm not saying please to you. And the hedgehurst said, well, I'm not telling you how to get out of the forest. Oh, all right then, please. Can you show me the way home? And the hedgehurst showed the king the way out to the palace. But on the way, the hedgehurst said, I want a reward for leading you back to your palace. And the king said, what would you like? And he said, I would like the first thing that you see that comes running out of the palace when you get back. The king thought, oh, it's always the dog. But he didn't say that out loud. He thought, it's always that. He said, yeah, you can have the first thing that I see. And the hedgehurst said, well, and I will come for it in a year. So off the king went. He showed the king where to go, and off the king went. And the hedgehurst went back and carried on just looking after his sheep and his chickens and copper and looking after the land and what have we. The time passed. And there was the king one morning sitting at the breakfast table with his wife at the other end and the princess there, their gold cutlery, and they were eating breakfast. And suddenly the king heard the guard call, Your Majesty, come quickly, there is an army invading us. The king got up and went running out into the battlements. And he said, where are they? There, Your Majesty. And he looked down, there was the hedgehurst on his cockerel with thousands of chickens and thousands of sheep. It was an army of animals. And the king went, oh. And then the hedgehurst looked up and he said, I've come for my reward. Oh, I've jumped ahead in the story. He said, I've come for my reward. Now, what I forgot to tell you, when the king got back to the palace, what do you think came running out to see him?
His dog.
Yeah, I've given it away, haven't I? It wasn't the dog. It was his daughter. I've missed a bit of the story, sorry. And I've told it so many times, the story. So the king had promised his daughter to the hedgehurst without realising. And his wife had said, well, he'll never, the hedgehurst will never turn up. And if he does, he can just cut his head off anyway. But there he was, the hedgehurst. And he said, I've come for my reward, your daughter, the princess. And of course, all the villagers were there like you, and everyone heard. And the king knew that if the king has made a promise, he can't break the promise in front of everybody. So he knew that he had to marry his daughter to the hedgehurst. Now, long, long ago, a king had that power. He could just make his daughter marry someone. And he said to his daughter, daughter, meet your husband-to-be. And she looked at him and she said, he's ugly, father. He's so ugly. And the king said, well, you're marrying him anyway. I'm sure he's a fine young man. You'll be married tomorrow. Things happen quickly in those times. And they were married the very next day. And they had a bridal bedroom for the husband and wife to go to. And they went up that evening to go to sleep. And in castles years ago, every room had a fire because they didn't have central heating. They would have a fire. And this bedroom had a fire, lovely fire and a rug and a beautiful bed. And the princess was all kind of nervous of sleeping with this hedgehurst because this hair was now kind of like spines down all the way down his back. This little nose and these little hedgehog hands and feet. And he could see she was hesitating. And he said, well, don't worry. I won't be sleeping with you. I'll sleep on the rug in front of the fire. Oh, okay, she said. And she put her nightdress on and she got into bed and she looked above the covers. And he just rolled up in front of the fire. She drifted off to sleep. A few hours later, middle of the night, she heard a noise. She woke up. She looked, and it was the hedgehurst. He'd stood up, but she couldn't see him. She knew it was him because by the fire, and she couldn't see him properly. But what she could see him do in the shadows was he took off his skin of spines, and he stepped out of it. And he went out of the room, down the corridor, and out of the castle. And she went to the window to look. And there he was. He went to tend to his sheep and his chickens and his cock to make sure everything was okay. And she ran back into bed and he came back. She heard him come back and he stepped into his skin of spines and he put it back on. He curled up. He fell fast asleep again. Well, the next day at breakfast, she didn't say anything to her mother and father, and she was kind of a bit nervous, and mother could see she was a bit nervous. Following days, that night, they went to bed, and the same thing happened. Middle of the night, she heard a noise. She looked. It was the head nurse. He got up again, and he'd taken his skin of spines off again. Out he went. She got to the window. She had a look. He went out to his animals once again. Came back. She got back into bed. He put his skin back on. She thought, that's really odd. The third day, that night, the same thing happened again. She saw him in the middle of the night, out of his skin, back into his skin. She said, oh, there's something not right here. Well, she was mentioning her mother, the Queen, now. And the Queen said, my dear, she said, you're not looking quite right. She said, you're looking very pale and nervy, and is everything all right in the bedroom? She said, Mother, she said, I have to tell you. She said, he doesn't sleep with me like a husband and wife. He sleeps on the rug by the fire, and in the middle of the night, gets up, takes his skin and spines off him, and he goes and looks after his creatures. But I can't see him properly because it's all dark and shadowy, but I know it's him. And it scares me, Mother. I don't know what to do. The Queen said, She said, we need to go and see the wise lady. But the people can't know that the Queen and the Princess have gone to see the wise lady, the commoner. We can't let all the peasants know that. She said, we have to go in disguise. She said, we need to dress a bit like the peasant people do, sort of. They might have a pink sweatshirt or something, or or a stripy top or something, or maybe a blue jumper thing. But if we put a hood on, or a pink cap, we will just look like the ordinary people. So that's what the Queen and the Princess did. They went to the wise old lady. Knock, knock. Come in. Sit down. She said, yes, how can I help you? The Queen said, it's my daughter. She's married. This strange creature she described. The old lady said, that's a Hedgehurst. He's been enchanted. Do you know what to do? Said the Queen. Oh, yes, yes. She said, yes, yes, yes. This is what you must do. She said, you must get a bucket of water, fresh water drawn from the well, have it blessed by a priest. She said, keep that in your bedroom. She said, and you must hide when he goes out. And when he goes out, you must get his skin of spines and you must burn it on the fire. You must burn every single piece. And then when he comes back, you must throw the bucket of blessed water over him, and you will see what you will see. Okay, she said. The Queen put over a gold coin. Off they went back to the castle. Well, that evening, it's the same thing. They went to bed, the Hedgehurst curled. The Princess, she pretended to be asleep this time. She kind of closed her eyes, but she was kind of looking still slightly, through your eyelashes like you do sometimes. She had them up, and she was kind of looking. And she waited till the Hedgehurst got up, took his skin of spines, and he went. Immediately she got up. She picked up that skin of spines and she put it straight onto the fire and the poker, and she burnt every single last spine until everything was just ash. And then she hid into the shadows with this bucket of water. And the Hedgehurst came back. And she heard him coming up the corridor, and he was stopped by the door. He didn't come in like he normally did. And then he stepped in, and as he did, she, with this water all over him, and suddenly, there was the most handsome, more handsome than your pond, the most handsome man that ever there was, with beautiful black hair, jet black hair, long hair. He was so beautiful. The enchantment had been broken. And that was her husband. And they say they lived very happily. And they say that he had a little cottage built in the castle grounds so that his mother could come and live with them in her old age and see her grandchildren. And that's the true story of the Hedgehurst. Thank you.
That was brilliant. I just need to know what time it is. Half past.
Half past something.
Half past something. It's half past something. That's a good thing, because I suddenly realised, where is my? I'd taken my watch off, Where is my clock? It's there. There are lots of technical problems using this silly idea. Right. So here we are in Stowmarket. And somebody's just talked about fairies. So I thought I'd tell you the story of the Stowmarket fairies. See? And this was written over 100 years ago in a book. And it was a big fashion in the late Victorian era to write histories of a town. Now, it was a really good deal. You would get all the merchants to put their advertising in. Then you do all the history and you get all the posh, smart people to talk about their history of their houses, you know, Hook's Hill on the hill, you know, this big house. And at the very end, you'd have a little bit about the local folklore. So in this book, it's quoted that the local vicar wrote all the stories of the fairies. And I like that bit. So I get to think that he actually believed too. So this is the Stowmarket. There was once a girl, perhaps your age, and she'd grown up believing in fairies, but she'd never seen one. And it was most important to see a fairy. So she went out every night to see the fairies. She dragged her friends. They sat in alleyways. They sat in cold corners of Stowmarket. And did they ever see a fairy? No. No fairy ever appeared. And the girl grew up. She got older and older. And she grew into those years that, as a parent, we might say are the difficult years. You know, it changes. With some, it starts on the dot of 13. Some might rise to 14 before it becomes difficult. Anyway, she hit the difficult years. And one day she was out there sitting in a cold place with her friends, and she suddenly thought, what am I doing? I am not a child anymore. And she said out loud those things that you should never say. Oh, this is ridiculous. There is no such thing as fairies. There never has been. There never will be. I do not believe in fairies. And that was the last day she ever went out and looked for fairies. And she grew up to be quite normal, really. As she got older and she met a young man and they got married and they had a little house in Stowmarket. It was a very nice little house, but in that time, in that place, you see, when you went upstairs, you weren't in a royal palace, so there weren't a lot of candles and there was no fire. It was quite bare. Anyway, this young woman and her husband, they had a little baby. Oh, it was glorious. It was a little boy and it was brilliant. It did all the things that children should do. In this day and age, we test. Does it crawl? Does it sit? Does it walk? Does it pass something underneath a tunnel? I don't know. All the stuff that you checked on as a child. And the little child did brilliantly. But then, of course, she had another baby. And was this baby the same? No, this baby was not the same. This baby was not a happy baby. This baby cried all the time. Grizzle, grizzle, grizzle. Grizzle, grizzle, grizzle. Did this baby put on weight? No, this baby did not put on weight. Everything was wrong. Everything. And of course, as a mother, what did that girl do? She blamed herself. She looked inside herself to find out what she had done to have a baby that didn't thrive, that wasn't going to live. And her mind churned. And it went back to that time where she had been 14 years old and she'd sat on one of those alleys behind the church in Stowmarket. And she shouted to the world, I don't believe in fairies. There are no such thing as fairies. They don't exist. And now she was full of shame and hatred of herself. And all she could think of is, my little baby won't thrive because I don't believe in fairies. And her little baby didn't survive. And she got sadder and sadder. But as is the way with the world, soon she was pregnant with another child. But she was full of panic. All the time she panicked. I must eat the right things, otherwise the baby won't be healthy. I mustn't eat the wrong things. And you invent the most ridiculous things that are right and wrong. I mean, in this day and age, I remember going into Sainsbury's and practically crying because you can't eat this and you can't eat that and you mustn't have this. And she did the same thing to herself. I can't eat strawberries. No, strawberries in the summer. No, that strawberries are going to do terrible things to a baby. What? Do you think strawberries will do it? No, I don't. But, you know, you get these ideas. But one of my babies, I ate a lot of currant buns. I'm sure that's why he's completely mad. But you do these things, and she got obsessive about things. I must have milk every night before I go to bed. Well, it must have worked because she had a beautiful bouncing baby girl, but was she happy? No, she was still panicked. Every day she worried about that baby. Now she worried that the fairies were going to come and get the baby. She obsessed that the fairies were coming and they would take her baby away. Now remember, she lived in that little house in Stowmarket, and when you went upstairs, you only had one candle, and when the candle went out, it was dark. There were no lights on the street. So no lights came in. So if you woke up in the middle of the night, it was dark as dark can be, black and gloomy. And one night, she woke up. You see, they'd been used to putting the baby in the middle of the bed, between her and him. When she woke up, was the baby there? The baby wasn't there. So she panicked, feeling round the bed. Where is the baby? Where is the baby? Then she listened. And she could hear little laughter, tiny little noises, giggling and laughter. And she knew it. The baby had been stolen by the fairies. The fairies were in her house, and she hit her husband so hard that he shouted and screamed. And she stood up and said, "The baby, where is the baby?" There was no light in the room, but she dashed to the window, drew back the curtain, and the moonlight came into the floor. And there was her baby, lying on the floor, stark naked, giggling, laughing at something. No nappy. And in those days, the nappies were pinned on, and there were the pins laid out, head to toe, head to toe, head to toe, head to toe. And as the moonlight swept over the floor, she could hear the soft giggling of the fairies as they disappeared down through the floor. Now, whether she ever panicked in the rest of her life, we don't know. But I think she felt safe once they tried to kidnap her baby and they'd failed. And that baby grew up to be a strong, bouncing girl. But the tale still walks the streets of Stowmarket. So if you stay here tonight and you're tempted out to a moonlight walk, keep your eyes out. Because I believe there's probably still fairies in Stowmarket to this day. Thank you. Well, I think her clock says 1830. What did yours say?
1840.
1840.
Yes.
Oh.
Outside the door.
What? Do we have any furthers on the timing? Anybody else look at their watch and tell me? 1840. So at this point, we're drawing to the end. This is an evening of stories that happens every Friday with the World Storytelling Cafe. It's an evening of stories for children. The World Storytelling Cafe, the cafe itself is a building that is in Marrakesh in Morocco. And every second year they have a festival. And some people here might have been to that festival. There's a lady over there who definitely has. There's a gentleman over there. There's a couple of people behind me who've been to this festival.
Twice.
Twice. And the festival takes place on the streets of Marrakesh. And it's beautiful. And it's mad. And it is African and lovely. But we still have our Friday nights when we tell stories for children to log in and see the stories from anywhere around the world. And adults can join as well. So if you leave here tonight and feel like you'd like a story on a Friday night, all you have to do is go to World Storytelling Cafe.com.
Just Google it.
Yeah. Press the gold button on a Friday night at 6 o'clock and you have 40 minutes of stories.
Can I just say as well, we don't only work on the streets and the main square. Who's been to Marrakesh?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Of course we have.
Yeah.
There's a massive square, they call it the big square. We have a tent there, but also we work in schools and we do storytelling. We get translators in French and Arabic to come with us, and we work in school, like primary and secondary schools, and the kids just love it because Marrakesh is the home storytelling.
And isn't it amazing? When we went in our first year, we went straight after COVID. We were the first thing that happened there after lockdown. And they were so delighted to have us back. And when we went there, there were very few young tellers. The tradition had died on the streets and was dying. But this time when we went, there was so much vibrant storytelling from young people who are learning the trade, learning to tell stories. So let's carry that on. Let's progress this weekend. And let's say thank
for us
you.
older people, we could get worked in ages. For the young folk there.
And we're going to say goodbye to the World Storytelling Cafe and see you another time. And there's a lovely gentleman on there. I'm going to press the button and go away because I can't leave. Because